Ocho sampo pagyo trashipa tuche tempe tinle yarngoda pelge drolor zampe zeparche palden lame shabla solvade Oma Guru Vajra Shasane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munish Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munish Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munish Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajra Dara Sumati Munish Munye Svoha Sashi Pyoke Chushi Meto Chama Rirab Lingshi Nide Gembadi Sangye Shindu Mikte Ulwargi Drukunamda Shingla Chöpar Sho Yidamon Guru Ratna Mindrala Kamniryata Yami Sangye Chedan Tsogi Chonam La Chanchu Pardo Dani Dagi Chinso Gibe Sonamgi Drola Pinchre Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsogi Chonamla Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chinso Gibe Sonam Drola Pinchre Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Chedan Tsogi Chonamla Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chinso Gibes Drola Pinchir Sangye Druparashu nel Buddha,
The Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Namo Lai Ke Dal Hudan Chinke Buddha Dami Ke Namda Rowa Kuinge Janamachi Tsampa Tamcheke to Dagi Chete. Buonasera.
Evening.
Mi stavo ricordando
I was remembering
una volta che
that once
a studiare in
that I was
Tibet
studying in Tibet,
è stato un giorno che faceva
it
tanto
was a
freddo,
day that it was very cold.
proprio non so se era la
I don't know if it
temperatura,
was the
se era il
temperature
fatto che ero a
or
4000
the fact that I
metri,
was like at
il corpo
4,000
comunque reagisce in un modo
meters,
diverso.
and anyway the body
Mi
reacts in a
ricordo
different
che
way.
la sera prima
I remember that the
ero
evening
dentro il
before I
letto,
was
mi
inside
avevo
the
messo
bed and I had like
sotto una pashmina,
a pashmina
sotto una
below, then
pashmina,
above another one,
3
then
coperte,
3
avevo lo sleeping bag da
blankets.
meno
I had
30
the
e tremavo.
sleeping bag for -30 and I was
Finché,
shaking.
insomma, le calze a me non mi piace per niente dormire con le calze, a un certo punto mi sono
I,
messo le
I even
calze,
put on the socks and I
messo
really
il
hate
maglio e a un
to
certo
sleep with
punto
the
ho
socks.
smesso
I
di
put on the
tremare.
sweater also, and then at
Era
a
come
certain
se il
point I stopped
freddo fosse così dentro
shaking,
che
but
non...
it was
E poi il
as
giorno
if the
dopo
cold was so much
mi trovavo al
inside
Tibet
that.
centrale, Shigatse, era un posto
Then the
molto
day
secco, ma
after I
quel
was
giorno lì
like in
era
the
di più
central
umido
Tibet.
e aveva
It
nevicato.
was indeed it was like in Shigatse, and that day was very
Io ero
dry and it
andato al mattino
snowed in the
presto
morning.
dal mio
So I
maestro
went
per
in the early
ricevere gli
morning
insegnamenti
to my
ed
master to receive
effettivamente
the teachings,
sentivo
and
tanto
actually I
freddo.
was feeling very cold.
E quando arrivo lì,
And when I
sto
was there
aspettando per entrare
and I
dal mio
was waiting
maestro,
to get
che
in
era l'abate
to my
Tashilompo, che
master,
oggi è
and it
nostro
was the
Monsignore Rinpoche,
abbot
e
of
lui viveva in
Tashirumpo,
una
and he was
piccola
living
casettina, che è
in a small
lo stesso posto, lo
house,
stesso appartamento,
and
per
it was
modo
the
di
same
dire,
place, the same
dove
apartment, so to
vivevano gli
speak,
abati di
where
quel
the
monastero da
abbots of that
circa
monastery
400
had been
anni.
living for like
Lo stesso
500
letto,
years, like the same
gli
bed
stessi
and
dipinti
the
sul
same paintings
muro,
on the
è molto
wall,
soggestivo anche, suggestivo anche
and also
andare lì in
very
questo posto ed essere uguale come era per tanto tempo.
suggestive somehow,
E
the
c'era la sua
fact that you go there
stanzetta
and still all the
che
same.
dava verso un
And there
cortiletto
was like the
piccolino.
small room
Una parte del cortile da solo è
facing
coperto
like
con una terrazza,
a
più o
yard, a
meno
central
terzo,
yard,
quarto piano. E questa parte del
and
cortiletto coperto, ma piccola
there
piccola,
was a
avevano
small
fatto anche
part
una stanza per una persona in più, che era uno dei suoi discepoli
of
che
the
viveva lì.
courtyard that was
Riuscite a sentirmi
covered,
tutto bene, no?
and a
E
part
quindi
of it was
c'era
for one of his
questa
disciples that
stanzetta che
also
non
lived
era
there,
altro che un pezzo di
and
questo
this small
cortile
room
coperto
was just
dove
a little
hanno
part
messo
of this
qualche
covered courtyard
pezzettino di
where there were
legno
like some
con una
layers of wood,
porticina, ma era molto molto
like
sottile, altro
very
che
thin,
commodo,
and with like
altro
a
che
door.
lì
So there was,
infisso
of
perfettamente
course, we're
chiuso
not
e
talking about any kind of
sembrava di non vivere lì.
insulation, and
Io
you had
visto che
like
avevo
all kind of
freddo quel giorno, lo guardo e
frozen
vedo che
air
era
coming in,
inizio di
and
dicembre,
so it
qualcosa
was
del
the beginning
genere,
of December,
il vero inverno
and like
freddo
it
lì
was
che
like
comincia verso
really
gennaio,
uh,
febbraio,
like the
ottobre,
real
no?
winter there
L'ho
starts like
guardato lì e
January and
dissi,
February, and
ma
that is even more
d'inverno
cold.
non hai
And so I asked, but like in winter, aren't you
E lui
cold
mi
here?
guarda,
You live
poi mi
here.
guarda
And
e
he
mi
looks
fa,
at
non
me,
ti capisco.
and he's like, really,
Lo
I don't
sguardo,
understand you.
quando lui, lo
Like
sguardo
the
che aveva
way
lì
he was
verso di me
looking
era,
at
ma
me,
che
I
cosa
was
mi
like,
chiede?
what is he asking me?
Io lo guardavo
And I
per dire,
looked at him,
d'inverno
but
non hai
in
freddo?
winter, aren't you cold?
Lui mi guarda
And he
e mi
looks at
dice,
me and
d'inverno
says, in
fa
winter,
freddo,
it's cold.
punto.
That's it. It's not that we need to discuss about it. It's not that we need to get our mind busy with the fact that it's cold. In winter, it's cold. In summer, it's warm. And that's it. So there is no point in saying, why is it so hot? And look here, and then you can get into the fact. You can check like, okay, the global heating and stuff. But the real matter is.
Ok? Perciò. E quello che mi ero accorto è che lui,
So what I realized is that allowed him in the winter time that his mind
nella sua pratica di meditazione,
was in his meditation practice, in other things, and not there in worrying about the heat or the cold, or pre-suffering that. And then would he have felt the feeling of cold? Yes, of course. But when I'm like too cold, then I go in the kitchen where there is like the fire.
Quando vado lì vado un po' in cucina.
So
Semmai dormiranno tutti e tre insieme in cucina.
maybe they will all sleep together in the kitchen and that's it.
Esiste un luogo,
There is a place where
va trovato il giusto equilibrio.
one needs to find the right balance.
Però in generale,
But in general,
più abbiamo paura di
the more
soffrire,
we are afraid of suffering, the more eventually we suffer. This is what actually happens
più
usually.
abbiamo quella
The
cosa
more
di
we have that thing, okay, if this happens like this, that happens like that, the more we have an idea that things should be balanced, should be perfect, that everything should go in the right way,
più faticoso.
then it would be more difficult.
Da un'altra parte, se noi
On the
riusciamo
other hand, if we are able to welcome reality, the reality that we have, the difficulties that are there, it's a bit like saying, okay, I'm in a difficult moment of life, there are problems, you're alive.
perché finiscono i problemi.
Then, in order for problems to stop, it's not even enough to die.
Tu credi che nel bardo poi non ci
Do you think that in the bar you don't have problems?
e poi uno rinasce?
Then one is born again?
No, non è che
No, it's not that.
non è quello che è il fatto, no?
The fact that.
E quindi quello che succede è che
So what happens
più forte in qualunque contesto è questo, più forte l'immagine
in any context is that the strongest is our idealized image is of how things should be, the more we suffer when things are not how we think that they should be. And then, even when we have a strong image of how they should be, we also have more of a hard time to enjoy them when they are, because we take them for granted.
o no?
Isn't it?
Io sono passato anni
I've spent years in Tibet, in India, 12 years, in a context that is materially very simple, poor,
mai mancato nulla,
and I
veramente,
never
era molto
lacked anything actually, but it was very simple.
E lì il concetto dell'aria
There, the
condizionata
concept
uno
of
non se lo
air
sognava
conditioning, you
neanche
wouldn't
da
even dream
lontano,
of
ma
it.
non se lo sognava proprio, perché
You wouldn't
non
even dream
c'era,
of it
non
because
era
there
una
was
cosa
no
che
such
era
thing, and
possibile
it's not like
pensare.
something that you could think about.
Faceva caldo nel
It
sud
was
dell'India
hot
d'estate.
in the south of India in summer, yes,
Si
definitely.
faceva quello che
What
c'era
did
da
you do?
fare.
What you had to do. So
Non era mai un
it
argomento,
was never like a subject of conversation.
no? E quello che io mi sono accorto
What I
è che più
realize
noi
is
diamo
that
spazio mentale
the
a
more
qualcosa,
we
più
give
quel
mental
qualcosa
space to something,
prende
the more
spazio
that takes
nella nostra vita.
room in
La
our
nostra
life,
mente
and then
riesce
our
a entrare
mind
in quella cosa.
is able to go in a
Ed è in
loop
parte, secondo me,
on that.
connesso
And partly, according to me, is connected with
quella cosa lì che c'ha quel nome
that thing that
particolare,
has
sistema
that
reticolare
particular
ascendente,
name,
ne
the
parlavo qualche volta.
reticular ascendant system.
Io credo che a noi
And I
quando
believe
diamo un
that
nome tecnico sembra
when we use like a technical name, then it seems
usiamo questi nomi ogni tanto,
more.
anche se io personalmente capisco poco. Però ho letto che esiste questo
But anyway, I read that there is this part of our brain which is called the reticular ascendant system that
sceglie
on its turn chooses what information to pick or not, because we receive in any second an enormous amount of information, but really enormous. And here we have like different scientists saying different numbers, but I care little about the precise number. The point is that we receive an enormous amount of information. There are those that say 11 million pieces of information a second, and we are aware. There are those that say of 10 or of 50 or of 2000, but like 2000 still on 11 million or 50, there is not much difference. But the point is that we have there is little information of which we are aware, other than the fact what we see, what we call reality. It's like as if today, okay, we are here in the Gompa today. How many are here of us today? Like 50, 70? And we could say, okay, here there is room for 50 people, but there are other 11 million people that want to get in. How many people living in Milan?
Così piccola?
Like so small?
Vengo da San Paolo.
I come from São Paulo, which is 15 million. So, in this little town, we have 2.5 million, and so for 11 million, we need to go around and get them. So anyway, with the whole Lombardy wants to get in here. Who decides who comes in or not? And it's not like the whole Lombardy comes and sends like a form to then check. No, they all come together. In the same second, they all come here, like 11 million people. And then someone at the door decides who can come in or not, and 50 can come in. And also those 50 that come in, then is said to them, okay, like this is the population of Lombardy. It's not very representative.
Noi cosa facciamo?
What do we do? Of the 11 million pieces of information, we take those 50 and we say this is reality.
Oggettiva.
Objective.
Ok. La cosa molto interessante
The
per
very interesting thing for me, and that I'm trying a bit to train myself on and to observe it in myself, is that this system is not something that is totally autonomous, in the sense that it is autonomous, and it's not like we have to think, okay, what kind of information I give more importance to or not, but there is someone that commands, so that person that is at the door has some rules to follow. It's not that it just chooses randomly who comes in or not. And there are some factors. I remember of 3 main factors. The main factor are the physical needs.
più un bisogno è
The
forte,
more a need is strong, the more I give importance to what relates to that need. So like thirst, heat, cold, the more is strong, the more we give importance to that need. And here there is a fundamental point, that is, when we don't know how to welcome our needs, then gradually our needs that are not welcomed will manifest strongly, stronger in a stronger way, so that they can get heard somehow. When we manage to cover some needs and to welcome them, and also to develop also those that are deeper, then I will explain myself better. What happens is that even when the previous ones lack, they will not fill so much space in our life. I explain myself better.
nella mia interpretazione,
My interpretation, according to the Buddhist teachings, we have 4 types of needs mainly. The first is the physical need,
fame, sete,
hunger, thirst, and so on.
il bisogno fisico viene anche
And the physical need is also called material need, because I need food to eat, I need to be in a place that has a certain temperature, I need to protect myself so from the extreme heat or cold, and from pain, and so we have some material physical needs. inside of these needs, there is the need to rest, there is the need to eat, to digest, to eliminate from the body what is not necessary anymore.
Noi di solito cerchiamo abbastanza bene di...
Usually we try quite well to take care of these needs, not in the perfection, but even if a body that has the needs completely taken care of is a body that can do 4 things well. So can sleep well, so he's tired when needs to sleep, wakes up with energy and has energy, has appetite, eats well, and then, sorry for the term, but shits well.
Quando queste 4 cose si riesce a far bene,
So when these 4 things are done well, so I can wake up, I will sleep well, I have appetite to eat, and I can digest well, then it means that my body is healthy. My body is working quite well. And it's something that I don't know how many of us can perform these 4 actions well.
molto spesso il dormire è problematico.
Very often to sleep is problematic. There are those that have problems in eating, maybe eating too much, or eating what is not necessary, or was difficulty with eating in general, and then all the problems to digest. I remember that once I was talking with a doctor that was trying to, we were seeing together how to introduce here some Tibetan medicines, but then it was like too complicated. We weren't able to do that. And I studied the various compositions of the medicine of the Tibetan drugs. We're talking about like 96 or even earlier. And when I made this little book with all the compositions and I talked to a doctor, then I found like 6 among hundreds of Tibetan medicines that were possible and according to the Italian law. And he said, look, what you need if one has to start and open like a new line of Tibetan medicines, then one should start from the supplements to decrease anxiety, to sleep well, so to lower like what is called the wind element, and then to help to go to the toilet. These are the first things, and then like a tonic also to give energy. So the first 3 things that people need are, okay, something to help with sleep, then something to help with energy and with digestive problems. And these are 3 of the main functions. And then if we go further, then okay, usually we eat more than what we actually need, or that would be good for us. A few weeks ago that I felt sick and I had diarrhea, vomit, and I was eating just like a handful of food each day, and I was feeling very good, like light, full of energy. We have this habit of eating for the pleasure of eating, and it's as if we had to eat until we are like completely full. And Tibetan medicine says so that one can have a healthy body, should in each meal not eat more than 2/4 of the stomach. So we should divide the stomach in 4 parts. 2 of them we fill them with food, 1 with water, with liquid, and 1 we leave it empty. So one should finish a meal that still will be able to eat again. But we have this culture of having to eat and eat so much.
Quasi come se...
Almost as if, I don't know, there was like a danger if one doesn't eat enough. I see this also with children. Sometimes I see like some anxiety if the child is not eating and the child is all fatty, but did he eat well? Yeah, he will eat. He will maybe be hungry soon, and then he will eat again. Sorry. I remember that when I was a child, at a certain point, I had a total aversion to brushing my teeth. And my mom was trying to force me to brush my teeth, and I didn't feel like. And then at a certain point, she sent me to brush my teeth, and I remember that I was taking a toothbrush and I will just put some water on it, but I would just do like that, but I wouldn't brush my teeth. One day, she talks with the doctor, and she says, I don't know what to do. It's not that every day I can hit him in order that he can brush his teeth. I tried in a nice way also to scold him. And he said, okay, let's try one thing. You don't say anything anymore. Just let some time pass, and then one day you will feel the need and will understand why it is needed. And the day that and he said, okay, it was challenging for her, and days passed until one day I said, maybe I'm feeling like a strange taste in my mouth, I don't know. And then I brushed my teeth by myself, and then I started doing it again. And I'm convinced that with eating, other than those that have anorexic problems and so on, okay, you don't want to eat, wait a while, and then you will eat. Then if the food is available during times of meal, okay, then when the day passes and you're hungry because you didn't eat when it was time to eat, then you will eat the next day when it's time to eat. I imagine. Then, but we see that, okay, if when I'm a kid, a child, I receive this anxiety, you haven't eaten enough, and so on, then we bring this on. And and then we eat more than necessary, and we eat many things that are not good for us. A while ago, I read that a child of 6 years old, and this was already 10 or 15 years ago, a child of 6 years old at the time would have eaten more sugar in those 6 years rather than an adult of 90 years old. Why? Because until a while ago you didn't eat a lot of sugar, and the problem is that our body doesn't have the capacity of processing all the sugar that we eat. A friend of ours that also comes here at the Kunpen made a study a few years ago that proved scientifically, like an important scientific study, and she was able to prove the relationship that there is between some kind of cancer and the quantity of sugar that one absorbs. And it's very clear that the increase in the sugar consumption is directly connected with some kind of cancer. And one of the reasons is that our body doesn't have the capacity of metabolizing that enormous quantity of sugar that we take daily. And this, according to me, is also strongly connected with this state of anxiety, with this inner speed, with this need that we have also to act and to do, and then these vicious cycles are created. Anyway, all of this to say that in general, okay, we take quite a good care of the first need, but actually it's not very much so. And so, okay, the physical need is something that needs to be seen and taken care of. The second need, that is the emotional need, when that's when that's fine, that brings us some sense of well-being. But when the emotional need is not right, we have like some kind of void, we don't receive affection, we don't receive love, we're not able to give love or give affection, there is like an emotional block in relationships, that naturally creates a block. And when this need is not covered, our reality, our world becomes death. The man that is by the door and has to decide who comes in or not gives priority to things connected with that need. That becomes our reality. And then we have our need of security, of which we have talked about already many times, our need of feeling safe, which is not security meant only as living in a safe city and so on, to be able to go out at night, which is also important. But we are talking about not living under a threat. And we, unfortunately, very often live under a threat, but the threat is of our ghosts. Maybe this happens, or that other person judges me like that, and why here, why there, if I'm not good enough, how will I manage? We create an enormous quantity of threats, and they create tension.
E poi c'è il
And
quarto
then
bisogno che è
there is the fourth need, which is our spiritual need. That is our need of giving some meaning to life and to live it with meaning. What happens is that when we are able to satisfy our physical needs, that opens some room to satisfy our emotional needs. And then when we satisfy our emotional needs, then that gives us possibility to take care of our need for security, and then on its turn for the spiritual needs. And the interesting thing is that when I have satisfied my so-called emotional needs and I feel well emotionally, at that point, if I also lack the material needs, they're not fully covered, this doesn't empty the second container. So there is a certain stability that remains. And it's for that that, according to me, when we see some people that
hanno raggiunto uno stato di equilibrio
have reached a state of inner balance, that it's not indifferent, in order to reach that state of balance, it's necessary to have a minimum materialistic stable situation and also emotional and security to take care of that aspect. But once they managed, also when you lose everything else, of course there is some difficulty involved, but they don't lose that stability. And this is some very good news.
Io ho conosciuto diverse persone
because I've met various people that even if they went through moments of hunger or big difficulties, they were doing quite well. And even when I was talking with Lakpala once, and I asked, like, this my master of mine in India, I asked him, what were the most beautiful years for you since when you left Tibet? And he left Tibet in the 59, and he said the first 10 years until we live in Baksa. Why? I knew the story a bit. The first years they were living in a place in the north of India. There was an ex-prison of the Englishmen, where also Mahatma Gandhi was sent in prison. And when the Tibetan refugees came, then they all put them there. The reality is that the food that they had was just some rice that was like full of bugs and poop of mice, and there was also some corruption in between. So what they got was like the worst of the worst, and 80% of them were sick. To sleep, you didn't have like a bed. You just had like to lay down somewhere, losing up the belt. So it's not that they were finding themselves in the best situation. If we imagine ourselves in that situation, with no view of the future, because your country had been invaded, you don't have a perspective to go home, you don't know what is going on. That's complex. And so why were those the best years? No, those were the best years. Okay, now why? Explain me, because here there is like something not right. And he said, look, the years that I lived there, the only thing that we were talking about, the only subjects of worry and was like the situation of Tibet and the practice of Dharma. That's it. There was nothing else. Because we didn't have anything, and so there was no mine and yours. Then at a certain point, our economical situation started to get better. And then it started like my house, your house, because here, because there, and to divide. those first years we were together, we were talking just about Dharma, we meditated a lot, we practiced a lot, and those were really wonderful years. And what makes me reflect is also the fact that one takes care of the spiritual aspect, and this helps also to sustain a moment that is also very difficult, and to live it with joy, to live it well. And also one has some memory of it left as if it was like one of the best moments in life. Doesn't mean that there were no physical difficulties, no. Doesn't mean that he didn't have any backache because he slept on the ground, or that the winter was not difficult because there were no blankets, or that he didn't have hunger or diseases. All of that was there. But he lived that with joy. We at least need to try to find like a middle way. We shouldn't go to extremes. And it's not that you find this joy in poverty, it's not that. But we should be really careful to not go to the other extreme. That is when we have more than anything and anyway we're not happy. Also because we don't give enough room to take care of the more deeper aspects that we have. And here there is a level of competition that is non-different, in the sense that if I go to a child and on one hand I put like a phone with some cartoons, and on the other hand I give him a book, it's difficult to compete. Let alone also a child, I mean also us. On one hand, like a book, then if it's like a book of like a deeper subject that's even more difficult, and then on the other hand, like each one his own thing. Like maybe one likes to watch all the little dogs movies, then maybe someone the news, or some other like TV, the series. And when we have such a level of distraction and of addiction to dopamine, because we have a lifestyle that is strongly dependent on dopamine. We have projected, in the times that we live, we have projected happiness on pleasure. We have made this strange equation, okay, more pleasure, more happiness, forgetting that the nature of pleasure, or at least the function of pleasure, is that of making our reward system work. I explain myself better. I'm hungry, I eat, I feel good. It's pleasant to eat. After I've eaten, okay, then it goes down again. That state of pleasure ends, then I get like some void, and I feel like I need to eat again. I want to eat again. But if eating wasn't pleasurable, who would ever eat? The reward system is fundamental, and it's that system that we have that allows us to put energy into something. If sex wasn't pleasurable, no one would be here of us. Ready to relate with a person is not simple. If there wasn't like an exchange of pleasure that also goes beyond sex, but then also there are other aspects. There is also sex, but then we will do it. I remember already many years ago I was reading that in Japan there was an enormous crisis of demography, because many young people, we're talking about at least 10 years ago, they chose that they preferred to not have couple relationships. They rather used some robots with which they could satisfy their sexual needs, because then you didn't need to put effort to relate with another human being. Okay, with no comments.
Tutti gli effetti collaterali che quello poi porta.
With all the collateral effects that brings. But, okay, so if there was no pleasure in many things, then there would be no search for that thing. We wouldn't put energy to obtain it. And the nature of dopamine, of pleasure, is that one thing is pleasurable, the higher the pleasure, the deeper the fall that comes after, to then give me that push, that force again to go back there to that pleasure. So what is the function of pleasure? To make us put energy into something. That's the reward system. What is the function of pain? To make us get out of something. So our system recognizes that there is something that is harmful, hurts us, and so pain, suffering, allows us to see what is not right and to make us put some effort to get out of it. Pleasure allows us to get towards something that theoretically is good for us. So, what happens is that in the nature of pleasure, the strongest the pleasure, the deeper the fall. Here there are two interesting dynamics. Our body, a quick parenthesis, but it's important for us to understand this dynamic, or at least for me, when I saw it, it made a lot of sense. Our system, our body, constantly tries a state of balance. Then it's a bit like the entropy. But anyway, it tries to find balance. When we have a sensorial stimulus that is very strong, so we have a lot of dopamine. There is an internal alarm ringing, like, okay, there is too much dopamine. And what does our system do to recreate the balance? One, it hides the receptors of dopamine, and this makes it so that we have we need more and more a greater stimulus to feel that pleasure, and so like the same thing that gives us pleasure, when we repeat it, doesn't give it the same pleasure. And the other thing that is very particular is that when the stimulus of dopamine is very strong, the body, in order to try to recreate balance, stimulates the opposite of dopamine. And so it generates a state of sadness, of like feeling uneasy, depression. So one gets into this addiction to pleasure, but then after that pleasure there is that fall and one gets into a sadness. Sometimes I've already seen like someone does like things with which one feels a lot of pleasure and one feels bad, doesn't even know why. There's like the fall of dopamine, and there is also this effect in order to try to find some balance. What happens is that unfortunately it creates addiction. And if we observe, we live in a society where the goal called happiness is strongly identified with pleasure. You can just see when you go around, and also in Italy even more, what is there to do? To eat. And then, yeah, it's completely fine to eat, of course, but it's not that restaurants are there built where the priority, the best restaurants are those that give us the healthiest food. What determines how many Michelin stars does a restaurant have? How much dopamine it generates at the end. How good is it?
Per me,
restaurants, okay, we can also like leave the stars for all the taste and all that comes with it, but to give also some stars for how healthy it is, that also wouldn't be bad, wouldn't it? But we don't want healthy thing, we want like tasty things. Why? Because what we want is that dopamine, is that pleasure.
Addirittura
And even there are many things connected with this, but now I don't want to get too long in it. But when I'm able to satisfy dopamine in a very immediate way, for example, I want to feel pleasure because I feel that void, and I can choose between something that I have like by hand or something I need to struggle with. What do I choose? The one that I have close by. Why would I do all of that when I can just pleasure right away? It's not a rational thing. We live.
Quello che vado a dire adesso è una
What I'm going to say now is complete theory, which could be right or wrong, so don't take it for right.
Ma secondo me
But according to me, there is a correlation that is not indifferent between the level of sensorial stimuli that we have today, meant as an increase of food, the pleasure, the dopamine through the screens that comes together with an attitude that is more and more closed in ourselves because of our device, and a collapse that is gradual in the way that we that of the sexual intercourses that there are there in the couples the last 10 or 20 years. There has been a collapse, especially in the young people. The other day I found myself in front of this information. I was trying to read it so that I could understand what does this mean, where does this come from. On one hand, there is less human connection. On the other hand, there is, me, I have pleasure here. Immediate. Why would I face the other, meet each other, understand each other, listen to each other, and all of that? And so, what happens is that if we maintain this lifestyle that is strongly based on having dopamine, having pleasure, the result of the pleasure of obtaining the object of desire is dissatisfaction. And then the moment comes where those very stimuli don't bring the same feeling of pleasure, and then one doesn't even know where to find stimuli anymore. And so it's important for us to take care of the needs of the body, and then also a healthy body is doing well. Also, when the body is not very healthy at the beginning is more difficult. Why? Because we are attracted by what is harmful for us. Me, for example, now I'm in a new phase of my path, and before it started with mozzarella, that I couldn't eat mozzarella. Now there is like the challenge, the summer challenge, is that I love ice cream, and I like ice cream so much, and it came out that I have a resistance to insulin, and so I can't eat sweets. Already once we'll go to a restaurant, but there is no such thing like as a dessert with no sugar. Okay, there is the sorbetto. Now, not even that. But the point is that, okay, it's not easy for us also to eat what is good for us, because we are attracted by things that are harmful for us, because our body is not balanced. The more we are able to bring our body to a state of balance, to a more healthy state, the more we are attracted by the things that are good for us. The other point is that if we are able to decrease this lifestyle that is based on dopamine, that is based on pleasure, and we try to find it more in the second need, that is the need of satisfying emotional needs.
Faccio un esempio.
Make an example. Now we are at the beginning of summer. We have this culture where you work a lot, you save some money to then spend them during vacations. So, okay, which is it's not fine, it's not a criticism. It's not a criticism, so vacation is a criticism to the system, but that's something else. But the point is that, okay, we go on vacation. Very often on vacation we think of what? Okay, in order to have a good vacation, I go to a nice place, I eat well. I often see, okay, did you go, you went somewhere, okay, how did you eat there? It's one of the fundamental points very often. But I remember a friend that after having had a plane crash, like a private plane that fell for situations that were really like unique, they didn't die all, nothing really serious happened. I saw him a few days after that he had this accident, and he said, you know, one of the things that I understood is that what matters is not the frame, but is the photograph. I use this term. He meant, okay, it's not really important where I am, but with who I am. Not whether the hotel is beautiful and all of that, but where, with whom I am. And also here there is the fact of saying, okay, I want to use this time and space that we call vacation to rest and then to also nourish some healthy relationships, to give some time, quality time to be together, to listen to each other, to see each other, to interact in an healthy way one with the other, with friends, with family, in a couple. Because if we are able to nourish well these needs, then that gives us a lot. Because on the contrary of a dopamine that has like a peak of pleasure that then brings like a fall, when we have pleasure that comes from human contact, from an aspect, a place of affection, of love, of connection, friendship, that's much more durable, much more connected with serotonin and with oxytocin, something much more durable.
Quando abbiamo un bel incontro con qualcuno, no? Ci parliamo, ci vediamo, ci tocchiamo, c'è un momento che è piacevole con l'altra persona, finisce quel momento, c'è una ricaduta subito o rimane quello strascio di che bello.
So when we have like a nice moment with someone and we feel pleasure, does that fall immediately when it ends or does it last? No, it's like as if there's like a sort of
c'è uno stimolo forte di
wake that is completely different rather than when there's like a stimulation of pleasure. And so I invite you to cultivate more this part, and in order to do that there is a challenge. To cultivate pleasure, there is the challenge of getting out of ourselves. A while ago I was reading of a reflection about the phone, and it said something that I really liked. The phone is this object where we are able to, through which we are able to access to the whole world. What can we do with it? We can do a lot. Maybe not everything, but so to speak, we can do everything. We can access all the information, we can talk with people, we can buy things. There is even sex with the phone. You can just check like the quantity of pornography that exists. And there is a part of the world of which we talk a little, but it's tremendous. The numbers are really scary. And here I open and close a quick parenthesis. There is an enormous problem in our society that the young kids learn as a reference how to relate sexually through pornography, which is an extremely aggressive and violent way. A friend a while ago she saw these things and she had to do with kids, and she said, Lama, we have to make like a project of porno dharma, because we need to do something to help to educate in a more healthy way kids from the beginning. Otherwise, here like this leaves like a trail for the whole life. It's not a joke. If someone would be able to do it well, like it has all my sustain, no taboo. So the phone, okay, then we can also buy food, we can make like an infinity of things with the phone, with a very particular aspect. I can talk with whoever I want, whenever I want, with the speed that I want. You're talking to me, I don't like what you're saying, shut up. I don't want to hear you now, I will hear you later. I will listen to you later. I don't want to talk to you anymore, I block you. And what happens is that that's a tool through which we have access to the whole world, but through ourselves. And that's a way to relate to the world that increases and nourishes in a way that is not indifferent our self-referential state and narcissistic, because it removes the other from the equation of life. Because I don't have to deal with you, I maybe need to read your message or listen to it if I feel like it, or to transcribe it maybe, because I don't know if I want to listen to your voice, and also it requires too much time. I get it transcribed and I just read it quickly.
Quando noi ci troviamo con l'altro,
when we are with the other, we need to relate, we need to face the other. And what I see today, it's as if it's like bad to call someone. I had to deal with some situation. I was like, okay, but is it okay like to hear, to call each other? It seems like something is not fine, because when we are talking, we need to face the other, we need to listen, we need to adapt ourselves. And also the other can be frustrating and annoying sometimes, because I need to get, and so it's not easy because I need to get out of myself and allow the other to exist. But the phone brings us to the directly opposite direction to this. But if we would be fine, happy and content, like in the fairy tales, me and my phone, then that would be great. If there would be like a robot, like a humanoid that one gets married with and is happy and content the whole life, okay, then great, because one is happy. But what I see is that it doesn't work. At the end, more and more we have difficulty in relating, we are emotionally more fragile, we have more anxiety, more depression, fears. We're much less resilience. And I see that as I was talking with people in totally different fields, also in work, and they all told me the same thing in Brazil or Italy, or in companies of any kind, and also the policemen here in Italy. And they all say that the kids that come, the young men that come here to work, like these days, have a capacity of resilience that is very, very low. And it's not just on the job, but also in life in general. And what I see is that if we are not with the other, then we become weaker. To be with the other, to adapt oneself with the other, to the other is fundamental. And we are going to an extreme where the problem is also not even anymore what is different culturally, the so-called immigrant. We are going to the extreme where the problem is the other. There is one example of this that I see. I was talking a while ago also with a master of a Zen center, and there exists in the last years, I don't know how many, but all those that go to the various Buddhist centers when you travel around, no one wants to share the toilet anymore. So you have to make like all double or single rooms, and there is a lot of request for single rooms with toilet, like the dormitories where you shared the beds, that comes less and less. So even if one struggles economically, would rather pay more to have like a single room or double maximum without having it to share the toilet with someone. But for me, this is one of the signs of our extreme individualism, where we have a difficulty in sharing life with others, that is, being together, of adapting to the other. I want to go to the toilet, there is the other person, then you just wait a while. Then, but I like to shower for a long time, but there is also the other. How beautiful to realize that there is also the other and to be able to adapt to the other. Then sometimes the other is not there, I take a long shower, or I wait that I'm the last one to take a shower if I want to have it long. But it seems that in order to adapt to the other, one has to sacrifice. That actually is beautiful and is necessary. Because when I adapt to you, then I offer you something, I see you. And that is the basis to love. In order to love, first of all, I need to feel empathy and sympathy, actually. In order to have sympathy, I should have empathy. And in order to have empathy, I should be able to see the other. In the Buddhist teachings, when it is talked about of the importance to generate empathy, to then generate sympathy, to generate love, to generate compassion, to generate altruism, we are at a point where many times we need to add like a further step. Okay, before generating empathy, we need to be able to see the other, to be with the other. And so, according to our needs, let's try to rearrange our priorities. And when we finally have life in our hands, that we are able to see, okay, I have 2 weeks, 10 days, maybe 1 week that I do whatever I want. What do? What is good for me. I try to nourish my needs, spiritual needs, try to nourish my emotional needs, to create some mental space to decrease paranoia and threats. I try to take care of myself. And this could also be done when one is at the sea. It's not that one has to say, no, I need to take care of myself spiritually, I'm against pleasure, and so I stay home where I'm all year long. Nature is marvelous and it helps a lot. But it's the direction that we go of what is our priority. And one of the important priorities for me is that of being together, is of sharing, being able to give and to receive, to face, to adapt, to face the other, to adapt to the other.
Con la via di mezzo, ossia
always with the middle way, that is, okay, you're there, and I'm also here. I adapt to you, but I don't abandon myself. I shouldn't cancel myself so that you can exist. But I shouldn't also, on the other hand, cancel you so that I can exist. And so,
quando noi cominciamo a rivedere,
when we start to revisit our priorities, and we see that, okay, for me, relationships are important. The other is important, to share moments with the other. Of course, the other is not important in the sense that I cannot live without you, you are everything for me. If one comes to us and says, look, I cannot live without you, then yeah, we will say, okay, stay away from me.
Perché è malsano.
Because that's unhealthy for you and for me.
Nel senso
In
che
the sense that
io proietto la mia
if I
felicità,
project my happiness on you,
metto un peso addosso
then I
differente.
put a weight on you that is really big.
Va benissimo, io ti amo,
It's
voglio
good,
stare
okay,
con
that I
te,
love you and I want to be
momento
with
con
you,
te,
to share moments with
mi
you.
fa bene stare con te.
It's good
Wow,
for me to
incredibile.
be with you. How great!
Io sono
But
responsabile
I
della
am
tua felicità,
responsible
tu
of
della
my
mia.
happiness and you of yours.
Però nel momento in cui noi veramente diamo
But
importanza al stare insieme,
since
al
the moment that we give
condividere,
importance
al
to being together,
trovare quella
sharing,
gioia
to
di questo
finding that
rapporto
joy
umano,
in these human
quello
relationships,
fisico,
the
non quello
physical
digitale,
one, not the digital one,
ok? Questo desiderio, questa priorità, questo direzionare in questo modo
and
è chi
this
dà gli
desire,
ordini
this
a quella persona che ha la porta.
direction is what gives the order to the person that is by the door deciding who comes in or not.
Quindi
So
cominceremo a vedere
we
più il
will
mondo
start to see the world more
in
like
relazione a
in
questo bisogno.
relation to this need.
Più noi diamo
The
priorità
more we
al
give
bisogno
priority to the need,
fisico, più
the
vediamo il
physical
mondo
need, the
tramite
more we will
quello.
see the world through
Ed è per
that.
questo che è così
And it's because
importante
of
per
this that
noi
is so
rivedere e
important to
richiederci
revisit
quali
and to
sono
ask
le mie
ourselves again,
priorità,
what are our
quali
needs?
sono le mie
What
priorità.
are my
Quando
priorities?
Ngalakpala mi
And when
diceva che
Geklakpala
quegli
told
anni
me
sono
that
stati
those
più
years
belli, le
were the
sue
most
priorità
beautiful
interne
ones,
quali
his
erano?
internal
Praticare il
priorities
Dharma.
were just to
Meditare,
practice Dharma, so to
imparare, studiare,
meditate,
quello che gli dava senso per lui nella vita era la
to
parte
study.
spirituale.
What
Tutto il resto non
gave
aveva nessun
sense to his
riferimento.
life was just a
Non aveva più
spiritual
casa, non aveva più
practice. Everything
paese,
else
non aveva
didn't have
più famiglia,
any place anymore. There
non
was
aveva
like no
niente intorno.
no
Quello che
family,
aveva era
no
il Dharma,
house,
il
no
rapporto con i suoi maestri,
country,
con la sua sangha.
original country. Everything was
Quindi
just the
quello che
Dharma,
erano le mie
the
cosa,
master,
cosa vedeva
the
lui?
relationship with the Sangha.
Quello, e quando
So
si
what he saw
ricorda
was
quegli
just
anni,
that.
che
And
cosa si
when he
ricorda?
remembers those years, what
La
does he
bellezza
remember? The
della
beauty
pratica,
of
dei
the
momenti con i
practice,
suoi
of the
maestri, come
moments with
Son
his
Rinpoche,
masters,
Tenzin
like
Rinpoche, che sono
Son
stati
Rinpoche
lì,
and Trinja
quei
Rinpoche
bei
that were there,
momenti che ha
those
vissuto,
beautiful
non tutto
moments
il
that he
resto,
lived,
perché
not
tutto il
all the
resto non
rest,
faceva
because all
parte
the
di quegli
rest
11 milioni
was
che non erano
part
neanche
of
percepiti
the
lui.
11 millions that were not even perceived so much.
Quindi dipende moltissimo
And
da
so it
noi,
depends a
dove
lot on
mettiamo la
where
nostra
we
attenzione.
put our attention on.
Perciò,
And so
questo è principalmente quello che volevo
this mostly
portare
is what I
oggi,
wanted to
perché
bring today, because
adesso tanti di noi avremo un
now
momento
many of us will have
più
like a moment
calmo,
with more
cosiddetto
calmness,
periodo
a
di
so-called
vacanza,
period of
ed è
vacation, and
importante
it's
per noi
important for us
cercare
to
di
try
utilizzarlo al
to
meglio,
use it
no?
well.
Lama Gangchen Rinpoche
Lama
diceva
Gangchen Rinpoche said,
make your
make
holidays
your
holy days,
holidays holy
fai che
days,
le tue vacanze siano giorni sacri, che non vuol dire che non
which
puoi
doesn't mean
divertirti, che non
that you
puoi
shouldn't have
fare una
fun,
cosa
that
che ti
you
sta
shouldn't do
piacendo, che
something that
devi
is
stare
pleasant,
lì
and
nel
you should
tempio
sit there in the
24 ore.
temple
Non è
24
quello che sto
hours
dicendo.
a day. It's not
La
about
cosa
that.
importante è
The
che
important thing
giornate
is that
sacre sono giornate che ti trasformano in
holidays
modo
are
positivo.
days that transform us in a positive way.
E magari faccio
And
una
maybe
settimana con una
I spend
persona
like a week with a
che può essere
person
mio
that could be
fratello,
my
mia mamma,
brother or
mio
my
padre, mio
mom, my
compagno,
father,
compagna, chi sia.
partner,
E magari è una settimana
and maybe it's
faticosa,
like a difficult week,
però
but
ha migliorato la nostra
it improved
relazione.
our
Ho
relationship.
imparato
I
qualcosa di
learned
significativo.
something meaningful.
Sono riuscito
I
a
managed
crescere come
to
persona.
grow
Wow, che
as a
bello,
person. Wow, how
che
beautiful.
bella vacanza.
What a great
È stata
vacation.
faticosa? Sì,
Was it difficult?
va bene.
Yes,
Anche perché
but that's
io
okay.
mi ricordo benissimo
Also because I remember very
la prima
well
volta
that
dopo
the first time
tantissimi
that
anni che
after
sono stato
many
una
years
settimana
I was
facendo praticamente nulla.
for a week
Ci
doing
trovavamo a
basically
Pechino.
nothing. I was in Pekino
Mia mamma doveva fare l'intervento che aveva avuto
and
alla
Beijing,
tiroide.
and my
Dovevamo fare
mother had
l'intervento per
to do like an intervention to
varie
the
ragioni il
thyroid
nostro qua
for
dilungato.
various reasons that
Ha
I don't
scelto di fare
get
Pechino
long
anche
on
se
it,
aveva tutti
and
i
so she
medici, i
decided
presidi
to
che
do
lo
in Beijing.
aspettavano. Siamo stati lì e dopo che ha
And
fatto
so
le
we were
prime
there, and
analisi
after
prima
that
di
she
fare
did the
l'intervento
first,
si doveva aspettare circa una
went through the
settimana.
first analysis.
Quindi
Then we
eravamo
had
in
to
questa
wait like
bella
for a week.
casa
So
di un
we
amico
were
che
in
ci
this
sta
nice
ospitando
house of a friend that was hosting us.
e non è che c'era
And it's
moltissimo
not
da
that
fare.
we had a lot to do.
Eravamo lì nella
We were just
casa,
there in the house.
aspettavamo.
We would wait.
E sono stato una
And so it was 1 week, and it was like the first time after so many years, 1 week really where I did very, very little every day. And there I realized of something that impressed me. When you do a lot, you do a lot of things during a day, and you get at the end of the day, then you're tired, right? But when you spend your whole day and you're doing nothing, and then you get at the end of the day and you're tired. And then I say to myself, so it's not true that I get tired because I do a lot of things. I get tired because I wake up and the battery runs out, and then it's the end of the day I need to recharge myself, so there is no excuse, okay, I don't do that because I get tired, because anyway I get tired. So one goes on vacation, doesn't do anything, gets tired anyway. But I didn't do anything, why am I tired? One, okay, there is the accumulated tiredness. Then there is also the fact that in any case is in the nature of our body, this cycle of day and night, of energy in the morning, tiredness at the end of the day, and so on. All of this to say that the point is not to not get tired. The point is to live things that then summed one day to each other, one day after the other, help us to live in a better way. One day after the other, 1 year after the other, then bit by bit, these things help us to feel better. And among these, one of the most important ones is the human relationships that we have. Let's also remember that in relationships, time shouldn't be measured on the basis of the quantity, but on the basis of the quality. What matters is not how many days we have together, but how we live them, how we experience them. So one day experienced in a profound, sincere, intense way is worth much more than a whole month just like so and so. And this depends on us, on where we put our energy, how we do it. And then it's also fine, like those days that you just take to do nothing, so to speak, to also allow our mind to do a very important thing, that is just to kind of let our emotions wind down, because we have a whole life that we are constantly taken by stimuli and to things to do, and also in general in life, if you have the chance of simply just staying, then let's try to do it. One goes at the beach, then just leaves the phone away. A few days ago, I lived a scene that was very beautiful on one hand, but on the other hand, it showed me a strong part of society and of the world that we live today. I was in the middle of the woods at night, and at a certain point there were all the fireflies, so many of them, like hundreds, close to Albagnano. And I was there like with other people, we were looking at them, wow, how beautiful. And then there was like a child that was there. She had never seen fireflies before, and she was like, how beautiful, how nice. And we were all looking at them like, wow. Then the child says, okay, no, I want to look at the cartoon. Okay, nice fireflies, but just like a little dots in the darkness, turning on and off. I want to look at the cartoon.
Noi siamo abituati a avere stimoli così forti che
we are so used to have strong stimuli that we can't see beauty anymore.
E qua c'è un processo.
Here there is a process that on our side to be able to go through the abstinence, to the crisis of abstinence, and to be able to have less stimuli, to be able to find again the depth in things, the joy in the small things. I don't know how many of you realized that yesterday was the longest day of the year, other than maybe one that read it on the internet that there is a solstice. How many saw like the dawn and the sunset and realized, wow, today is a long day, what is going on outside? I don't believe that many of us had this perception, like I didn't. I thought, it's a solstice, how beautiful, what does it mean here and there? But we live in a world that is very closed, where we have a hard time to see what is outside. Me, the times that I'm able to see the dawn is one of the most beautiful days because it's so beautiful.
Cerchiamo di permetterci.
So let's try to allow ourselves these simple moments.
Per questo,
and it's for this that when we talk about our needs, the more we're able to welcome these needs, the more naturally that brings us to a greater state of well-being. When our needs are welcomed, naturally one feels well. It's hot? Yeah, it's hot. It's cold? It's cold.
Non è più il centro
that's not anymore the center of my attention, to try to avoid any suffering in every moment, try to have pleasure in any moment.
Io non voglio criticare.
And so I don't want to criticize like the complaining that is hot or feeling hot. If one asks, is it hot? Yeah, it's hot. And then we move on. Then it will be cold in a while. Then it will be cold again. Or hot again. But the fundamental point here is let's try to create some space. Also for things that normally we're not used to do. And someone could say, yes, Lama, but it's difficult.
È difficile, sì.
And yes, it's difficult. It's difficult because we live in a context that pushes you in the opposite direction. We live in a context that pushes us to stay more and more towards pleasure, and the pleasure, if we put them together, the physical need and to satisfy the pleasure, where lives where the goal is to have dopamine, and on the other hand we put like emotional needs, human connection, to try to find a state of inner balance and of security, and the spiritual needs.
È un po' come il cellulare.
It's a bit like the book and the phone.
Quando uno riesce a
When one is able to take the book and to read it well, that's 1,000 times more beautiful than the phone. It's like reading a beautiful book and to watch the movie of a book. Usually the book is more beautiful, isn't it? Also because in the book there is our creativity. We imagine, we get into the story and all of that, but in general our tendency is much more a stronger stimulation to just look at the movie. And here there is also our law of minimum effort. Until a while ago, I was quite contrary to the law of minimum effort and maximum comfort. But then I understood a little while ago that the law of minimum effort actually has a very important function. And that's something that is part of our system.
Noi abbiamo una quantità di energia limitata.
We have a limited quantity of energy.
Dobbiamo usare la nostra energia per...
We should use our energy for what is most important. And so, when our body, mind, sees that we don't use the energy, that something is not necessary anymore, then removes energy from that. If a part of the body is not necessary anymore, that part of the body loses energy. If we stop performing a function with our mind, that part of the brain loses energy, bit by bit degenerates. The more I use it, the more energy it receives and the more it develops. But when there is something where we're able to do like that thing with less energy, with less effort, and we naturally choose that to manage our energy better. That in general is fine, and applied in the context where we usually live in, that doesn't really work, because with the law of minimum effort, we very often don't put energy in what is good for us, because often what is good for us requires effort. And so one of the first challenges that we find ourselves to face is to go against this law of the minimum effort, and to remember ourselves what is good for us, and to put energy into that, and to manage to walk against the current. And when I say to walk against the current, it's not that we should be anti the system or culturally against the current, but to go against the current to our bad habits, against the current. For example, if there is like the book or the phone, then spontaneously I will take the phone. Actually, I try to choose the book. It's not an easy choice. Why? Because we have this part of the minimum effort, we have this addiction on dopamine. I don't know, many times have we been trapped behind the screen with as a sort of magic, a sort of hypnotic effect. The one is just staying there and tries to get out, and is not able to do it. To me it has happened a few times. There were a couple of times that it happened to me. I was like, no. I was scared. Because one gets into that and doesn't get out anymore. Then we can also open many subjects connected with all of that. But the main point is, let's try to go back to some more basic things. That could seem strange, to talk about the importance of looking at each other in the eyes, of being together, being able to be with the other, also in relating with others, to others. Me, the other day, I was a group of people, like people that I know, friends. There was a group of people looking at something, and I got closer to them, and they were kind of laughing, looking at something. I was like, what is it? It was the first time that I saw the Tinder screens, and it's this application where it's like a sort of display of people where the attitude is like playful. There was like playful attitude, okay, this I like, that I don't like, this I like, this is like that is like that. But what does this show? A way of relating to the other that is superficial. I don't want to judge good or bad, or it's fine and not fine. It's not that. What matters to us, the other person, really, is what we're able to give and receive in the way that we relate to the other. Me personally, if I had to choose between a person that is aesthetically very beautiful, with a difficult character, and a person that aesthetically is like not beautiful in my parameters, but with a beautiful characters, I would definitely choose the second one, but with no shadow of doubt. I remember Lama Gangchen, you're so fixed on beauty that you're there like putting the makeup and putting up the clothes and the gym and this and that, everything for appearance, when actually beauty, that is the most important beauty, is a beautiful mind.
pensando a questo
And
certe
thinking about this, sometimes I like the image of Lama Gangchen. Lama Gangchen is a wonderful, beautiful person, but was not inside the parameters of aesthetic beauty. He didn't have hair. It's not that he would cut them. He didn't have them. Didn't have hair. Didn't have eyebrows.
era basso,
Was short, a bit round. Many aspects didn't match the parameters of beauty, but it's also strange to say, because who met him could say that he was actually very beautiful, and it makes me emotional to remember him, because he was very beautiful. But that beauty didn't come from an aesthetical appearance, but by what it was emanating.
io conosco persone
And I know people,
da un punto di vista
maybe from
non sono un grande
an aesthetical point of view, are not really so beautiful, but so beautiful to be close to them. They emanate joy, and they have like something. And when they get into like a place, you feel like that the place changes even.
wow, che bello.
And wow, how beautiful.
Questa è la bellezza che veramente vogliamo, perché
And
poi
this is the beauty they really want. Because at the end, why does one want aesthetic beauty?
una volta una coppia
Once a couple of friends,
erano andati a
they
fare
went
le vacanze
to
e il viaggio di nozze in una piccola isola. Se mi ricordo
went for their wedding vacation in a small island.
quando sono arrivati lì per andare,
And when they went there,
era prima un aereo grande, poi si era arrivato in un altro posto.
they took like a plane, and then another smaller plane, and then even like a really small plane with 2 or 4 seats, something like that, very small. And they said that there were many people, local people, on the flight, and women in particular were very fat. And even they would make them sit on the plane to balance the weight. They couldn't be all on the same side. They were extremely obese. And getting on the island, they learned that in the local culture, beauty is connected with how much one is fat. And so they saw this friend here in Milan, from Milan, that was like thin like a stick.
Poverina.
And they would say, poor, are you sick? You're so ugly. And so I asked myself, a person, man or woman, that is, in this context of that island, we're talking about that mostly women, because also men and like are like that, but more women. But a woman that is in our society here, there is this stereotype of beauty of being very skinny, and so as the fixation of not gaining weight, of always being skinny and this and that, goes to live for a very long time on that island. And then someone starts, okay, no one is looking at you, first of all, you're so ugly. And then one day, maybe you start to gain some weight, you're looking better. And then after a while, what would be the tendency? To want to gain weight or not? Depends also on how proud is one or not, also on whether there is Instagram or not, because there are those that lives physically in a place but doesn't live there. Like, okay, in a indeterminate time on the island with no internet, you're just there. Does it change or not? Because at the end, often what we want is to be seen, is to be loved, to receive attention, to receive affection, love. So we want to be good, we want to do the right things, we want to seem nice. Why? Because we want to be seen and loved and so on. And the reality is that, or what works the best in this, is who we are other than the body. The body is fine, there is nothing against that and taking care of one's aesthetic. I don't have problems with that. I don't judge that. When I was a kid, I had a very strong preconception. And then the day that I cut my hair and the machine broke, and then I had to get out with half haircut and half not, but also in a non-coherent way. And I remember that I felt like so ashamed, and I saw the attachment to my image, and then I changed my vision. But then, okay, nothing against, okay, how does one like to get dressed, to appear to the world? No problem with that. Just that becomes just a part of oneself and not the main part. Because then what we manifest to the world mainly comes from the way that we relate to the world. Our character, our emotional state, our choices, the energy that we emanate.
Lama
Gangchen sometimes said in the morning, before the day starts, you prepare yourself behind the mirror, facing the mirror, you put on the makeup, and Lama Gangchen said, okay, that's completely fine, you can put on your makeup, but remember to also put on your inner makeup, to also prepare yourself internally. Today I have a day, okay, let's add a little bit more patience. Here we need a little bit more affection, love. Because this is what makes a difference. I remember that the person that was telling of a vacation that she did in a very beautiful place, there was a situation that was very annoying to her, unfortunately, that it was annoying to her, of being in a beautiful place where people were being served, but where there was no human contact with the people that were serving. In the sense that you're just there eating, they come, they serve you, they cut the fish or this and that, and you don't even look at the other. Because that person is a function. It's not a person that is performing a function. That's how we often live it. One of the important things when we get out of our home, both in the town that we live, but also when we go in other places, other countries, is that there are other people, each one with their own life, with their own story, with their own needs, joys and sorrows, with their own life. So the most beautiful part is not what you eat or what you see, but are the human relations that are created. But we have this tendency of being so narcissistic and self-centered that even when we go to a place with a lot of people, we have a difficult time to relate to people, to what is there, and we try to get something. I don't know, I see this in tourism. I've been the past year, my mother wanted by all costs to go to Egypt, and so we went together to Egypt. Beautiful, many things, but you know what was the most beautiful moment? We saw marvelous things and so on, but the most beautiful moment was, if I remember well, in the city of Luxor, in the public square, by evening, where there were all the families playing, and to be together with the local people, to talk with the families, to play with the kids, to be together. That human contact was the most beautiful thing. If I would have to say, what was the most beautiful moment? That. But you have been in a temple here and that. Yes, I've seen things. But as you would also say, you can go in a lot of pilgrimages and go to beautiful places, but the most important pilgrimage is to go meet special people rather than places. And when we are able to connect to the other somehow, that kind of exchange is beautiful. But let's try to allow ourselves to do it. Let's try to allow ourselves to live them, to experience them.
Per poter fare
And
tutto
so,
questo,
in order to do all of this, there is an important part.
finché noi
As
rimaniamo
long as we remain with so much noise,
facciamo fatica
we
a andare un po'
struggle to go a bit further,
oltre la superficie.
beyond the surface, beyond ourselves.
Quindi prima dobbiamo
And so, first of all, we need to allow ourselves to experience some silence,
permetterci di
to
stare
allow ourselves to be with ourselves a little bit more.
magari per tanti questa
Maybe for many this is already the normality, and I rejoice of that.
per chi non lo è,
For those that
importante per noi
is not, then it's important for us
fare una cosa per esempio molto
to
semplice,
do something, for example, very simple,
ed è il modo
that
in cui
is
noi cominciamo
the
la
way
giornata.
with which we started the day.
Non è che ci vuole molto,
It's not that one needs a lot, just wake up in the morning,
prima di fare chissà che cosa,
before
respirare
doing
un po'
anything,
consapevolmente,
you breathe with awareness a bit,
generare una motivazione di cosa voglio in
to
quel giorno,
generate a motivation what I want during the day.
uno può scegliere di fare
One can choose to
una preghiera,
recite a prayer or a spiritual practice, that's even better,
però almeno poter
but
cominciare la giornata con un po' di
at
consapevolezza.
least to start the day with some awareness, and not that one wakes up already with the phone in the hand to look at something, okay, where is the coffee, here and there, go to the toilet, and when you've seen that it has already gone in an automatic mode, someone could say, but Lama, I don't have time, I need to go to work early in the morning, then just wake up 15 minutes earlier. Like it has already happened to me, I don't have time to meditate in the morning. Okay, if you really don't have time, go work in a pyjama. Do you have time to wash yourself, to get dressed, to look at the phone, to drink the coffee, to do whatever else you do before going to work? I imagine you do. So add 10 minutes or 5 minutes even. Remove something else. But take the time, sacred time, and that is important to stay with yourself.
E poi,
And
se
then, if you try to be by yourself and you see that you're not well by yourself, then it means that you're in a bad company. And that's not good news.
dobbiamo migliorare quella compagnia.
We need to improve that company.
Quindi se uno quando
So,
sta da
if
solo
one,
con
when is
se
by
stesso,
one is
disagio,
by oneself,
è una
is feeling
ragione
uneasy, that's a further reason to do it,
superare quel
to
disagio
overcome that
per star bene.
uneasiness and to be fine with oneself.
E mi diranno, è
And
difficile,
someone
e
could
sono
say,
d'accordo che è
it's
difficile,
difficult, yes,
però
I
non è
agree
che
that it's
è
difficult, but
piacevole,
it's not that it's
facile
pleasant or
stare in
easy
quella situazione di
to
disagio
be in a situation
che prima o poi
of
non abbiamo scelta.
discomfort with oneself, because sooner or later we will have no
È
choice.
importante
So it's important
prendere
to
quei
really
momenti al
take
mattino, uno
those moments in the morning when one
siede
wakes
un
up and
attimino,
sits for a while,
schiena dritta,
back
respira
straight, and just breathes with
consapevolmente,
awareness,
genera la motivazione
generates the
della giornata,
motivation
cosa
for the
voglio
day.
fare
What do I
oggi?
want to do today?
Oggi voglio praticare la
Today I
pazienza.
want to practice patience. That's
Abbastanza
it.
come motivazione.
That's enough
Oggi voglio
as a
coltivare un po' più di
motivation.
amore,
Today I
voglio
want to
essere più
cultivate
gentile,
more
voglio
love. I want to
lamentarmi
be
di
more
meno.
kind. I want to complain less.
Oggi voglio
Today
guardare le
I
cose
want
con
to
un
look
po'
at
più di
things
profondità.
with a bit more depth.
Voglio permettermi di
I
vedere e
want to
godermi le
allow
piccole cose
myself
semplici della vita.
to see and to enjoy the
Oggi voglio
little things
cercare
of
di essere
life.
più presente
Today I
nel
want to
momento
try to be more
presente.
present in the
Oggi
present
voglio
moment. Today I want to
essere meno condizionato dal
be less
passato, dalle
conditioned by the
proiezioni
past
sul
and by my
futuro.
projections on the future.
Oggi voglio essere più
Today I
generoso.
want to be more generous.
Abbiamo un'infinità
We have an
di
infinity of possibilities, of
Però se
things that we
riusciamo a
can do.
generare un
But
po'
if we are
un'intenzione
able to
diversa
generate
di come vogliamo
an
vivere
intention of how we
al
want
di
to
là di
live the
quello
day
che
other than what will
non
happen,
importa se
doesn't
la
matter
giornata
if it's like a day where I'm by myself, or whether I go to the office, or I'm with the family, but I give myself a direction. And then, if I know that this is the day that I will have to do things that normally are a bit difficult, then I generate a particular motivation that is coherent with that. But if we're really able to create this habit, that at the beginning of the day, we start the day with a moment of more balance, of a little bit of meditation, of breathing, then if one meditates even better, but that moment of staying with oneself, then you start, and possibly to end the day also like that. I believe that many of us, unfortunately, we live inside of a lifestyle where one doesn't fall asleep until one is completely exhausted. One goes to sleep and before going to sleep just watches the TV or does something until like it's like completely exhausted and just is falling asleep and then goes to sleep. Okay, one can also watch a movie or something, but before going to sleep to just sit a little bit, also to just breathe. Or if one has more difficulty in falling asleep, then one can also do it laying down, can also breathe with awareness or to do a spiritual practice, to thank for the beautiful things for the day, to direct what I want for the next day, to generate a bit of that awareness with oneself, to connect with love to the others, to allow that. If we could do this when we wake up and before going to sleep, to be with ourselves a bit, and I'm not talking about long sessions, I'm talking about 5 minutes, 10 in the morning, and in the evening, maybe like 15, it would be a little bit better. But also here it's not a matter of quantity, but of quality. And so, at the end, it's about the habits that we have that then make the difference. It's the way that we live, that we experience them. In some Buddhist traditions, a particular emphasis is given not on emphasis, but on conduct. And they say, no, for us it's not as much what you think, but what you do. There are other Buddhist traditions that don't say, no, it's not really important what you do, but what you think. The reality is that when I'm doing something, bit by bit, that transforms my way of thinking. They are both right. And so, the important thing is to try to include in our daily life, in our lifestyle, those things that help us to do it in a more sane way. For example, eat with awareness.
Prima di mangiare, di solito c'è una preghiera.
Before eating, usually there is like a prayer. But the point is not really what you recite, but that one uses that moment before eating to reconnect with one's spiritual path, to generate gratitude, to generate love, to have awareness of one's own body. The fact of eating, if one lives, experience it with more awareness, then becomes an act of generosity towards the huge amount of little beings that live inside of us. Usually we believe that we're eating for ourselves, but actually we are giving food to an enormous quantity of beings. There are more beings in our body than human beings on earth. And so imagine that Lama Gangchen Rinpoche, the first conference, public conference that he gave in Brazil, we're talking about the 1998 or 97, we have it recorded. He talked about the importance of making peace with the microbiota. In a time where he didn't even talk about that. And he said that there are all these little beings that live inside of us, and if we're not at peace with them, then we cannot be at peace, we need to take care of them, and so on. And there is a very ancient practice that when you eat, one imagines first that one offers that food to one's own guru and Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, then dedicates and offers that food to all the beings that live with our body with an act of love towards them, and it becomes an act of generosity, dedicating so that in this way, okay, please help me that I can have an healthy body and mind. Also from a pragmatic point of view, what does one do before eating? Does with this moment. Then one has some presence with oneself, familiarizes with gratitude, with generosity, rather than just going in an automatic mode, and that's it. So what I invite you to do, and I invite also myself to do, is to take advantage of the moments where we have a little bit more time in our hands, also in normal daily moments of life, but to get out of our automatisms. In getting out of those, then we can see what our needs are, how can I welcome them, what am I doing in my life.
Come posso dire in un modo gentile?
How can I put this in a kind way?
Se non siamo noi a
If
fare per noi,
we don't do it for ourselves, then no one else can do it. Tibetan way of saying says, it's quite harsh, but it says, if it's not me who makes me happy, the others will make me suffer. Which means that I don't agree with the way of saying, because, okay, both my happiness and suffering, as Buddha was saying, depend on myself. I am my own protector and I'm my own enemy. But the main point that comes to me with that way of saying, if I'm not taking care of myself, who will do it? If it's not me who has a healthy lifestyle, for me, who will do it? No one. It's not that I'm just sitting there waiting that there is a change in society so that I can have a healthier lifestyle, or I'm just waiting that the others will do something. And me, it's me taking my life in my hands, from my way of eating, of interacting. So really, let's take advantage the opportunity that we have so that we can make our life as healthy as possible, from the inside out or from the outside to the inside, what is more convenient for us. And one of the things that for major causes I had to learn, but that brought me many more benefits, is that of seeing how the fact of changing the relationship to food, where I eat what I need and not what I like, and then when I also have what is good for me and that I like, that is better, but what I need is what I take, and what is harmful for me is just harmful. Even if I like it, it's not a sacrifice. To avoid to eat what is harmful is not a sacrifice. If I walk by the ice cream shop that I really like and I see the most beautiful ice cream and I don't take it while all the others take it, it's not a sacrifice, it's an act of love towards myself. Ah, poor you. Why poor you? I'm lucky that I'm taking care of myself. Poor me if I'm not able to eat something, or if I have to eat something that is harmful for me and I have to eat it, or maybe I'm even happy, I'm running towards the cliff smiling. Yeah, that's poor you, not the one that is stopping oneself from the harm. So when we avoid something that is harmful for us, even if we like it, that's not a sacrifice. When we do something that is good for us, even if it's even if it requires effort, it's not a sacrifice, it's an act of love towards ourselves. And it's like something joyous. And so let's try in our own way to do it. Who maybe will find this in relation to food, who in the way of sleeping, and the various habits of life. Remembering ourselves one fundamental thing, in order to make a shift in habits, one needs to start with small doses and go gradual. Cannot change from one day to the other. We need to take small steps and to maintain them. It is said that in order to create a habit, one needs 42 days. And it's the necessary time repeating an action to create new neurological paths. And so something is challenging at the beginning. Okay, I wake up in the morning, I sit, I breathe, and the first days is nice because I'm doing something new, a special thing. Then the third day starts to be a little bit boring. Then at a certain point it seems that it doesn't make any sense what I'm doing. I still do it, and after about like 1 month or 2 months that I do it, then it starts to become a habit. Like starts to become more easy, and at that point it starts to flow even better. And so what I wanted to say today mostly, also because now we have this time in the summer, where here at the Kunpen we don't have any particular activity. We have many activities in Abbagnano, and so if someone wants to run away from the heat, welcome to Abbagnano. Not that it's not hot, but you have like the woods next to it, so that's a different story. What happens is that, okay, today I really wanted to close by saying that, okay, when I started today, I asked myself, what would I like to share today? I don't know, because many things have been said. There is one side where many things have been repeated many times. But the reality is that the Dharma is simple. What we need to be well with ourselves and with the others is simple. The problem is not understanding it, is to do it. And here we need to repeat and repeat and repeat, so that slowly we can say, oh yes, okay, I can do it, and to assimilate it more and more. But the key point is in the hands, that's in the hands of each one of us in our own lives. And I also wanted to come here today, even if originally it was not scheduled. First of all, because I like it. Then, because I have trust in you. Trust in the sense that I am convinced that each one of you has the capacity of doing a lot. And it's uniquely by transforming each one of us in a more virtuous way, with a healthier lifestyle, with more healthy values, that we can change our society. There is no other way. The only way towards peace is to live in peace.
Non c'è un'alternativa.
There is no alternative.
Non esiste una soluzione politica.
There is no political solution for a peaceful society that is disconnected by an individual reality of those that make up that society. And so I really have trust, and I ask you to also have trust in yourselves. And then, one step at a time, and you can do a lot. And I see it, and I thank what everyone is doing. So this is mostly it. And so there is traditionally, there are some things that you say at the beginning of the teachings, and at the end, then it become a bit more like a ritualistic kind of thing, and then usually in Tibetan you also say it kind of quickly. I don't know who understands that or not, but at the end of the teachings traditionally is said, I ask you to take act of what has been said to you and to make it and to put it on practice. I make you this request. And so the only thing that I ask you, if there is something that we've seen today or in this whole period together, online, or whatever, when we see something that we believe is beneficial and that it works, let's put it into practice. Let's do it. Let's try it tomorrow. And to sit a little bit, like, I don't know, 3 minutes, starting to try, and like that really makes a difference. Now let's make the final dedications.
Jetsu Lama Kutse Rapten Chin Namkar Chinle Chokchur Gepadang Losan Tempe Drume Sasum Ki Drove Münstela Taktu Ne Gyurchi Nimodele Tsendele Nime Kunyan Delekshi Ninsen Taktu Delekpe Kunchosum Ki Kuncho sumki ngodrubutsol, kuncho sumki trashisho.
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and to sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Repeat after me.
Chö lam tutro, lam la parce, mi varsho. Possa la mente diventare
May the mind become the Dharma.
Dharma
May
diventare
the Dharma become the path.
Possa il
May the
sentiero
path be free from interferences.
Grazie a tutti.